Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lake Bluff Library Board of Trustees meeting. It's Tuesday, August 20th, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. We'll take roll call to start.
Trustee Shaul.
Here.
Trustee Jerch.
Here.
Trustee Graziano. Here. Trustee Jardine.
Here.
Trustee Hayes.
Here.
Trustee Friedeman. Here. Trustee Zaute is absent, but on.
I'm not certain, but I don't, does anyone else have any information?
He hasn't told me that he is unable to make it, but he hasn't told me that he's late, so I'm not sure.
Okay, could be. We'll see how it goes. Let's if you stand and join me for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? Here from our action items include the financial reports for the month of July. We have committee reports. We have an update on IGA. Renee will walk us through her update as well as library correspondence. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like we might break a record here. We can itch it. Any corrections or additions? Not to like put pressure on anyone who wanted to ask. Okay, don't have any adds or corrections to the agenda. Great. So this evening we do have someone here that I'm sure would probably like to take an early opportunity to address the board. Charlie, right?
Yes.
That would be great. Charlie, if you would just introduce yourself and tell us why you're here. I had the opportunity to meet Charlie a week or so ago in regard to the upcoming election for the library board, village board, park board, school board. That's what Charlie's here. So
My name is Charlie Hamlin. I'm a Lake Bluff resident here for 22 years. My mom and dad were here for 40 years. Long time coming to the Lake Bluff. I'm part of the Vote Lake Bluff organization, and I think as most of you know, Vote Lake Bluff is a group of people put together to try to facilitate the effort to get additional trustees elected when the elections come up. So we have another round of elections coming up, and we need to begin planning for any vacancies that will exist in the board, make sure that we have additional candidates that are available. So I'm the liaison. And key date for everybody to keep in mind is November 12th is the meeting that will be held for all the candidates to speak to the public. And it will be at the Lake Bluff Elementary School, as done in the past with filling out their affidavits when they come in. We'll have the opportunity for all of the candidates to speak. There are candidates, and then there'll be a quick vote, and afterwards there'll be petition facilitation. So I'm just here to figure out what you guys do and try to help out as much as possible.
Charlie, I do have one question. Are all of the boards going to be the same night? Because in past years, it's been two separate.
It's 2 nights, and the library board and the village board go on the first night generally, because the school board and the park district have a larger area.
Sure.
Would if they came for both for one night only.
Gotcha.
It's segregated, so it should be the village board and the library board first, and then it'll be the park district.
Thank you.
the other thing, Charlie, is that everything? Okay, so the last time that we talked about the Vote Lake Bluff organization, I had shared a couple of dates. everyone provided input into the 3-question kind of board profile, if you will, that will be shared on the Vote Lake Bluff website to kind of, what are you looking for in terms of board members? I meant, what are your top issues, concerns here at the library? And I forget what the one was in the middle. But you'll remember providing input to those questions, right? So I consolidated them all. They'll be up on the website eventually. The other thing that we had talked about, and this might have been a committee meeting, I'm not sure it was a monthly board meeting, but it was to potentially offer a night where any interested candidates could come and have a little quick chat, coffee with the board member or two. We had thought that might be December because this election isn't until April, but now that we know the date from Vote Lake Bluff is November 12th, we should probably, if we have this event, it hasn't happened in the past, but if we do have an event like that, it should probably be before November 12th. So any comments, questions about that?
I just want to add a couple things in the fall newsletter, which Jill will talk about more during the director's report. Jill and I did craft a blurb about running for library trustee. Charlie, thank you so much for coming tonight. We did direct people to votelakebluff.org in the newsletter. And we prepared a couple sentences about what it's like to be a board member. And so that will go out to all homes, all 60044 homes, to promote running for the library board. But if there's an event that the board would like to have, we could always promote it in a very kind of pop-up way. Just let us know when you would like that event, and then we can put together some promotional materials.
Great. And I know, Renee, when there were some vacancies that occurred on the board 4 years ago, roughly 4 to 5 years ago, a sign was simply posted on the door of the library, and that resulted in myself, Matt, another person who served briefly as a trustee, and there might have, I'm not sure how many candidates came forward, maybe Janie, you and Bill were
It was
called.
about 7.
Wow.
There were, yeah, there were.
When we did 2 interviews. So.
Yeah. So based on an N of 1 in history, that seemed to be a pretty good way to try to identify people interested in running for the board as well. Just a simple sign on the door.
Yeah, building and door signage will be included in our communication plan for sure. Thank you.
We do have signs put in people's lawns, so we can get it out.
Oh, good. Great. Thank you for following up on that, Charlie. So some of you may remember there were black and gold signs that appeared in our community saying, hey, we need qualified candidates for all 4 of these different municipal boards. Here's the website to learn more. So those signs will be reappearing, probably with a lot of other signs in the next few weeks.
The sign have to be our
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Charlie. Appreciate you joining us, and you're welcome to stay as long as you'd like. Okay, our next item is agenda item 6, approval of the library board meetings minutes from last month, July 16th.
Have a note from the secretary that she put the wrong header and it says June at the top of those minutes. So I would need to adjust the header to say July 2024, Tuesday, July 16th instead of Tuesday, June 8th, just what I believe it's today. So I'll have a word.
Have a word
With the secretary.
It's that cut and paste kind of thing eventually sometimes.
Just trying to get the right form.
Yeah.
Stuff, so.
Any other additions or corrections to the minutes from last month?
The only note I have is I think trustee Zaute was absent last month, but so just.
July 16th.
Yes, and I
Yes,
put June
fine.
18th,
Okay.
so that needs to be corrected to read July 16th.
So is there a motion to approve the minutes from last month?
I so moved.
Thank you, trustee Jerch. Is there a second? Trustee Jardine, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. All right. Yes. Yes. Okay. Renee, to you for the director update.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, trustees. I have some support to present tonight's director report to save my voice. But to start off with, I want to talk about some staffing updates. In your board packet, it has the full list of all staffing changes, and there were many this last month too, just like there was in June. July saw a lot of administrative and organizational changes with expanded positions, people ending their time at the library for a variety of reasons, and including some interviews. And I also want to say that despite all of these changes, reference and circulation manager Katie Horner and youth services and adult services manager Eliza Jarvi have been just integral in keeping a sense of calm with staff, despite all of this change. And so I just want to say thank you to Katie and Eliza for supporting the changes, and getting new people trained, and helping end people's time at the library. I also want to talk about collections. As you know from last month, we had Engberg Anderson present, and we talked a little bit about the upcoming collection work that needs to take place in the library to eventually support any strategic facilities planning. And so I'd like to pass the mic over to Eliza, who has really been the leader in spearheading a lot of energy around collection management and collection evaluation. So Eliza, could you speak a little bit about the collection work that took place and will continue to take place in the coming months?
Yes, absolutely. So we had a meeting at the end of July with all of the collection selectors and managers. And we took a look at a lot of data that I compiled from Sierra reports of what collection sizes were, what circulation looks like month over month for each collection, and comparing them to collection sizes at other libraries, and circulation percentages that are goals at other libraries. And we started the work of figuring out what the optimal size for a variety of our collections could look like, especially with this building work on the horizons. And it's just, I mean, I could go on and on about the data. It's really, really fascinating to me. But yeah, we're going to be embarking on some changes in the sizes of our collections, and I think it's only going to make the library better and stronger and easier to use.
Thanks, Eliza. So we presented our data to Engberg Anderson, and from that moment on, the next step that Engberg Anderson's going to take is the renderings. And so they weren't able to really start with the rendering process until they could determine what size collections we hoped what we would have or we would house in this building. I want to say that this isn't a surprise to any of the board members, but based on all the data that you've seen from other libraries, but we are looking at a reduction of over 10,000 volumes of our collection, which I think is incredibly needed. And based on the circulation data that we're seeing, there is just a lot of dead weight. And as we know that people are wanting more seating, they're wanting more collaborative spaces. The thing that takes up the most space in our library right now is collections. And so we want to use our money wisely. We want to order and purchase things that people actually want to read and review. And so I think this is just a long time coming, this reduction in collection size based on, just new perspectives, new data, new evaluation, and new strategies for honing our collection to serve our community. So that is a big project that will continue on. So thank you, Eliza, for that. I also want to say that Jillian has been back now for full-time for some time, and she and I are working really well together with communication. And so, Jill, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing that we have on the horizon?
Definitely. I also just wanted to add that we're really excited for Anthony to join our communications team as well. Some of the stuff that we've been working on recently is the fall newsletter that should be coming out here at the end of the week, reaching Lake Bluff homes hopefully by Saturday at the latest Monday, as well as here in the building. A lot of what we've been focusing on is streamlining the fall communications, where all of our different platforms between social media, the website, flyers in the building, and also additionally, we've designed and purchased a number of services highlighted on A-frames that will be out front of the building, which will be really nice to highlight some of the stuff that we haven't had the opportunity to let the public know about, or at least be able to focus that we have available to them. We have also put together a number of new web pages that will be highlighting a number of programs that we have coming up, like Banned Books Week, Illinois Library Presents partnership, and the Phyllis Fox Writing Contest, which has moved to this coming fall from our traditional springtime release dates. So we're really excited about a lot of stuff that we have coming up this fall, and to be able to communicate it to the public.
Jill, thank you so much. So the last couple things I'll say about the director's report, we've had really successful programs that are featured in the director's report as well. Two of our staff monitors malfunctioned this last month, and Katie Horner, who has been our technology interim lead, helped acquire new ones through CBI. You'll hear from Anthony at the top of new business today, but Anthony and I met with CBI just last week, and we learned that it's been practice that CBI has actually refurbished some of their technology and given it to our library for free. This is something that was news to me, and one of the monitors that was replaced was in fact one of these refurbished free monitors. The reason, I mean, it's great that we're getting free technology, but the reason that I was a little concerned about this is because as we're trying to put a finger on the pulse of where our budget should be, we really need to come up with accurate numbers for a technology replacement plan, and avoid leaning on an organization that may or may not be able to give us free technology free of charge. But apparently they've done this before with other things, including even our server racks in the back server room. So really glad that they've done this. We've been a member of CBI for over 20 years. Already in his first week, Anthony is looking at evaluating our contract and looking where we can save money and maybe readjust it so we can get a better competitive price. So more to come there. I don't have anything else to share about the director's report. Statistics last month, we had increased circulation and increased building visits. We also had increased Wi-Fi usage. And so I'm pleased with those statistics. We're just continuing to notice what the trends are for some of the new statistics that we're gathering. And as you can tell, another statistic that was very high is our teen volunteer hours. Summer is a big time for teens in the area to volunteer for the library, and we sorely need their help and appreciate their help. It's a great way for them to be able to get National Honor Society hours and so forth. And so we really appreciate one of our librarians, Vanessa Howland, along with the youth services team, work with the teen volunteers to work on supporting projects for the library throughout the organization. So that's the end of my director's report. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board.
I do have one, Renee, this is Janie. I'm curious
Janie.
as to why the Phyllis Fox Writing Contest has been moved to fall.
Yes, I would love to let Eliza talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. I would love to talk about it. So we moved it to fall after the last one for a variety of reasons. Where it previously was placed, we ended up having our award ceremony in May. And as I'm sure every parent of a school-aged child will tell you, afternoons in May are frequently booked with concerts and beginning sports, etc. There's a lot of things happening in May. And so moving it to the fall allows us to have that ceremony in January, which I have noticed a lot more people are available in January than in May. And it also aligns with NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, which happens to be the month of November.
Oh, perfect. When you said it was gonna be moved to fall, I was thinking, boy, as if there isn't already enough going on in the fall for parents of school-age kids.
Yeah,
Janie,
Yeah,
you're right
yeah,
about
you're
that,
right.
Janie. The other thing that Eliza and I had an opportunity to do was process improve how the planning of the program affected her team and her workflow of her team. So summer and May particularly is a really busy month for youth services. They are prepping summer reading program, doing visits and promoting things to the schools. And when I was here for the first Phyllis Fox, I was new and just kind of took everything in. And then afterwards, Eliza and I sat down and really thought about what would be an optimum time for her team in hosting the writing contest and the planning the event, while also supporting the curriculum. The fall tends to be where teachers could assign writing tasks and writing projects. So we're going to try this out and see how it works. But we haven't had any complaints, maybe a couple questions, because people are regularly asking about Phyllis Fox every year. It's a very beloved project and campaign that we do every year.
Well, I think winter is a perfect time for something like that. So that's good.
Hey, Renee, I have another question about one of the statistics. It's really not that much about the statistic, but looking at it, kind of prompted this thought. And that is the passport applications. So this was something that was not top of my mind, but it came up at a meeting that I attended. I shared out with you guys a month or so ago about the meeting hosted by Bob Morgan, Julie Morrison, and Tracy Katz Mule, 2 state reps, the 1 state senator. And the Lake Forest Library board president was there, and it somehow came up about passports and notary. And the Lake Forest Library does not offer either of those services. So naturally what happens is they send people here. So Renee, my question is, and we can defer this to a committee, I'm not sure what committee, but should we be looking at the passport applications and notary? How many are residents of the village? How many are not residents of the village?
So that would be a great question for Katie. Unfortunately, she is out on vacation. She is the one that manages our passport program right now. She also oversees our notary services. Notary is much more common for libraries to offer. It's a free service. If you have trained notaries, you can provide a notarized notary services at a government building. We don't benefit financially from it, but we look at it as a free community service to the larger Lake Bluff and surrounding areas. It brings people into the library. It promotes our services to maybe some non-users or reciprocal borrowers. We have had to redirect a lot of passport people who are interested to North Chicago. You may remember previous months, we talked about how North Chicago recently became a passport agency. And due to the fact we only currently have 1 person trained and certified to do passports, just given our staffing right now, we do still have to redirect them. So, but of course we have that information when we complete a passport application. I don't know if we track it though. Once we send the passport applications out to the State Department, there's a certain amount of data that the state requires us to track. I don't know if zip code or city of residence is one of them, but I can report back to the board next month with Katie here.
Thanks, Renee.
Yes.
Did you have a question?
I did just have a question, with to note the building visits being up. I was just curious about any trends in the heat map, that might be of note, not a rush if we don't have it, but it's something I would love to see how that compares just with the pilot hour adjustments.
Yeah, so June and July are generally the highest traffic months in a public library. And a lot of that is due to summer reading. When I was looking at our program schedule, I saw that we had a lot of programs in July. We did have some in June, but we kind of try to focus our programming end of June and July because at the beginning of June, we're planning for summer reading. Fridays tend to be our big days because of the farmers market. We get a lot of building traffic from that. A lot of people asking for the bathroom, but generally people who do use our library on Fridays. But nothing out of the ordinary that would have spiked it necessarily from my review.
Thank you.
Yes.
And I think, so to build on Ally's comment, the heat map's not included here, Renee, for visits, I don't think, right?
Right. We ended the original pilot, which was through June. And so last month I had shared the June data. So right now we're in the modified pilot. And I guess the board didn't discuss what type of data they wanted to see monthly, but I could certainly bring that heat map back next month and showcase July building visits and August, which I will have at that point.
Is that something you guys want to see? The heat map, remember the green, yellow, red,
I think it's worth
by day, by hour.
an extended pilot and comparing it to the original pilot. I think it would be valuable. So yeah,
My original plan. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear. There was someone talking. My apologies.
No, go ahead. I just said that just the comparison would be good to have the same kind of visual to go with it.
My original plan, I agree with that. In fact, my original plan was to bring all that data in September because that's the end of the 3-month modified pilot so that you could see it all together. In September, we won't have all of September data, but I can bring as much of September that I do have so that you can see it, not just in comparison with January through June, but you can just compare July, August, and September together. August tends to be a low attendance month in libraries in general, just due to vacations and things of that nature. June and July tend to be the bigger attendance months. But next month, I'll send out an email to the board and ask what specific data you're looking for to help make a decision about the modified pilot. And at that point, the library management team will have a recommendation as well. Thank you, Ally.
All right. Any further questions about that? Okay, then it looks like we're ready to move on to our financial reports.
So regarding revenues and expenditures, I'm very happy to report that we've already received approximately 50% of our expected revenues for the year. And a lot of that has to do with property taxes coming in this past month. A couple smaller numbers, but ones that I wanted to make of note. We're actually ahead of what we expected for passport postage reimbursement. Now, you may remember, Finance Committee, this is a brand new line that we added to reflect the amount of money that we earn from people that do passports, that want to do the expedited passport. We really didn't know how much we had some target numbers Katie presented, but you can see we're already at 30% of that expected revenue. Like I said, it's a small amount, but I do think it's worth noting because this was the first year of this particular budget line. We're also ahead on library fees. And again, this is the amount of money that people pay if they are out of district or in communities that don't automatically pay for library cards. So this number can fluctuate depending on if people in out of district know about the library, and we're trying to market ourselves more and more to people in Knollwood and the surrounding areas. So that is also ahead of expected revenue. Earnings on interest. I don't know, Bill, do you think that is probably on target for what we would expect now with the market?
Yeah, what got booked in that in the month of July seems to be kind of in line with where we were sort of thinking around that. So it looks like we're just a little under 20% through 3 months. So, but as we talked before, as tax revenue comes in, then the interest rate will come up, so we might see some bigger months coming into August and September and October, that might bring us back.
That's what I expect too, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then you may remember the conversation last month about the interest. There was questions from Bill and Bonnie about the number that was reported for interest for the month of June, because right now we're looking at July. And so we did ask Bettina and we did ask Joellen from Lauterbach and Amann, our accounting company. And the response that we got, I shared with the finance committee, but essentially it's Bettina said it's not necessarily the most holistic viewpoint to look at a particular month. And so she looked back on the year-long accrual of interest and said that around the same time we were pretty much on target. So I forward that response to the finance committee, but the Bettina from the village and Joellen from Lauterbach and Amann didn't feel that the number reporting was like historically different if you take the whole year into consideration. I will admit my knowledge, that's one of the reasons we lean on Bettina and our accounting firm. So I was happy with that answer, but happy to make space for additional discussion for this month's interest reporting. As far as spending, there's a couple things I need to look into. I need to look into what's going on with IMRF. I wasn't able to do that last month. But as you can see, IMRF is only at 8.75%, which shouldn't be accurate. And at the same time, we are a little ahead in our spending for personnel costs. But as the finance committee has approved, expanded positions with expanded hours, this is an expected cost to the library, and these lines are expected to be overspent by the end of the year due to those approvals. Our legal costs continue to increase. We'll talk about the IGA later in the new business, but that has been expected. And then I do want to say that the adult fiction collection and the adult nonfiction collection are going to be underspent at least by $5,000 total between those two lines, if not more than that. As we're approaching our collection projects, I've already talked with Katie, who orders fiction, and her staff member Carol, who orders nonfiction. It doesn't make a lot of sense, or practically speaking, to order those collections to the full budget if we're trying to downsize. So the goal is to downsize those collections, and so those budgets, we're planning to have those underspent. So I wanted to let the board know that now. Happy to answer any other questions about the financials. You can see we received our per capita grant check this last month as well. And we did pay a considerable amount for staff laptops that are being configured and distributed out. This is the phase 2 of the staff laptops that the first stage of the project was last fiscal year. So we've had to spread it out across 2.
Okay, any questions about the financial report for the month of July? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll motion to approve the.
Thank you, trustee Hayes. Is there a second? Trustee Zaute with the second. It's money. We do roll call.
Trustee Shaul.
Aye.
Trustee Jerch.
Aye.
Trustee Graziano. Aye. Trustee Jardine. Trustee Zaute.
Aye.
Trustee Hayes.
Aye.
Trustee Friedeman. Aye.
All right. That brings us to chats.
There are only 2 rather large checks that I wanted to highlight this month. One is to CBI, and that is for a large part of the upcoming safety security project. with the security cameras and the alarm doors. We had to pay another installment for that. And you may remember we will be getting reimbursed for all of these costs with the state grant that the library received several years ago that we're repurposing for this purpose. And then there's another check, I believe it's legal, as I'm scrolling up. Yes, legal services, Ansel Glink, that's our lawyer. There have been a lot of inquiries, and their support has been timely and really effective and helpful.
Renee, what's LinkedIn?
Yes, that is one of our online resources. So those databases that the library pays for subscription to provide to all of the community for free with their library card. You may remember we had something called lynda.com, and they have a database of videos, training. Lynda.com was bought out by LinkedIn Learning, and that is our annual purchase to provide access to this database now. I'll also mention too, a lot of our ebook learning or our ebook purchases are front loaded at the beginning of fiscal year, because summer is when the majority of our ebook holds and circulation happens compared to the rest of the year. So that's why you see some of those payments front loaded at the beginning.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions about our checks tonight?
I have one question. So the CPI line, there's two check numbers, but they're the same. And then there's two different like descriptions totaling to 13. So like is part of that 13 for equipment replacement and another part is towards the security infrastructure?
Yeah, let me get to where you're looking at, which I have my own PDF open here. What page are you on, Matt?
I'm that's one question. At least
Pages are at the top right.
This be the second page of the checks.
Okay, perfect.
814, 16145.
Where am I looking at? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so those are two separate projects. So the computer equipment monitor replacement, that is the first monitor replacement that we did actually pay for, plus all the laptops. What you don't see is what the whole line of the description is in this column. It cuts off as a character limit. And then the one underneath is the safety and security project. So it's one vendor, two separate lines for two separate projects. So that's why they get the full amount.
Makes sense. Thank you.
No, happy to explain it. Thanks, Matt.
Any further questions about checks? So whenever someone is ready to make a motion.
I will move to accept the checks dating July 17th to August 21st.
Numbers.
And the numbers are, thank you, check numbers 16135 through 16175.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Jerch. Is there a second to approve checks?
Also,
Trustee Zaute, thank you. Let's do roll call.
Trustee Shaul.
Aye.
Trustee Jerch.
Aye.
Trustee Graziano. Trustee Jardine. Trustee Zaute. Trustee Hayes.
Aye.
Trustee Friedeman, aye.
All right. Terrific. That takes us to our next agenda item. Our committee reports. All right. Finance and technology is up first.
Okay, we met July 18th, and the topics there were first was the update of the latest IGA meeting, which Renee gave us an update to. Then the second was reviewing the staffing updates and recruiting where we were. I think we extended offer to Anthony, and we talked a lot about, trends of what happens with the staffing, especially in the cataloging. So we looked at catalog librarian, hybrid librarian associates, as far as extending hours on those. And also discuss kind of trends over the last few years where the cataloging initiative has sort of gone down with other avenues going up, but without replacing the people that took over. So we looked at some projects. Renee did a great analysis of the number of hours that were used for different projects. And, you know, sort of felt that we needed to sort of move forward on a couple of these projects. So we approved moving extra hours in 3 of those positions. That's kind of summary of what I don't have anything else for that.
Okay, and then for the next Finance and Technology Committee meeting, we need to nail down whether it will be the 27th next week, which is Tuesday, or the 29th, which is Thursday.
Okay, and I'm running 2 problems now.
You now have problems with both of those dates. Okay, let's take it offline then. I thought that we would just be able to quickly nail one down, but let's take it offline to do that administrative work.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions for Bill from finance on the Finance Committee? All right. HR Committee.
The HR committee met August 1st. And at the committee, we Renee gave us staffing updates regarding some of the new hires and where she was with the training of the new people that were joining the staff and people that were leaving. She did a staffing analysis snapshot for us, so we were able to kind of take a look at where we are with staff right now and hours that and some of the benefits that and how that affects the library. The services we're able to provide here. So that was really helpful.
And Jenny, that was the same thing presented to the Finance Committee 12, 13 days prior,
Yes.
if you remember that.
So that was really helpful. And then the other thing that we discussed was hiring an outside consultant to do a staffing analysis for the library. It's something I think that was already in progress because it's going to be part of the Anderson proposal and part of that process. But we had talked about maybe starting some of it for the baseline sooner. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit further in the meeting. So is there anything else that I know, it's like, oh, it's first.
So under new business, we'll talk more about the HR committee request.
Yeah.
For the staffing analysis.
And I think that was it.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Building and grounds.
Well, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm gonna ask for a little help from my friends here, but I think we met August 1st. Is that correct? Somewhere around there, something like that. Somewhere very early on.
Sure.
In August, and since then I have been to the ends of the earth and back, and I honestly can't remember too much about what we did. I know we discussed in more detail. We went into more detail about the prior meeting that we'd had in end of June or early July, and sort of gave a timeline for some of the smaller of the projects that we were going to put in place. And I do know that I believe the new computer desks were installed Friday morning, and I walked right by them and didn't even look. So I'm gonna have to go upstairs and look.
Yeah. So you can see that carols that were donated to our library a number of years ago are behind Matt. So they're being repurposed here.
Oh,
provide little
that's a
more
nice idea.
space.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Well,
And-
actually, they're just a temporary storage. They've been listed on the Rails site to give away for free to another library who might benefit from them. There's just no other place in the library for them to live. So this is a temporary storage. We're hoping someone from Rails will be interested and we'll pick them up soon.
All right.
And the lights
so-
were off upstairs since we're not open. So it was pretty easy to walk past
I
that
just
new computer table.
I just realized that I probably was not even.
Check it out on your way out.
Yes, we'll have to turn some lights on so we can see them, but anyway, so that's exciting, and help me out, Renee, help me out, Sandy, what else did we do at that meeting?
So we met August 14th. I found it on my calendar.
Was the 14th?
Yes.
No, it couldn't be. I wasn't here the 14th.
No?
We have just got, mine says the 14th too.
Oh, did I?
4 o'clock. I think you had just come back from Alaska. No.
That would explain it. I was half asleep. Okay.
You were wearing.
So, Janie,
You were wearing
I'd be
very
happy
deep purple. But we talked about the building security system. We also talked about meeting with the museum team
Oh,
to be scheduled for early September.
okay, great. Thank you.
Two of the other topics that we talked about was the strategic facilities plan. I shared information about the collection project that we're doing and the space work. So I went over the next steps that Ingrid Anderson's going to take. And then we discussed the community engagement video series on the state of the library, which is a new project that's going to be funded by the Rails grant that we got as a way to highlight the information from the Engberg Anderson building reports in a much more, I think, accessible way to the public to help bring people's attention to some of the building concerns. And so there will be a series of 5 videos. We had our initial meeting, Jillian and I, with a local videographer who runs his business. He's actually worked with other villages and schools on referendum initiatives. So that is great experience and maybe something that might be of use in the future for our library. But for now, it's really just kind of an awareness strategy for us with the videos. Jillian, anything you want to add about the videos about the state of the building that we discussed for that project?
Just that each video is going to have a specific topic that the board is interested in highlighting.
Thank you. Yeah. So, for example, one will be on accessibility. We'll invite several board members to come and be interviewed, and it'll be spliced with pictures and B-roll of the library. We're hoping to bring in some people who participated in the focus groups. So these are people that already have an increased knowledge of the library and library users that can talk about their experience in the library. So, yeah, that project is coming up soon.
Thank you.
All right. So that was building and grounds. Any questions for building and grounds? Okay. We'll move on to new business then. And A is for Anthony tonight.
Yes, and as Anthony kind of steps up to the front, I just want to share a few words. We had 5 interviews for the technology manager position, and I have to say Anthony was the first, and for me, right out of the gate was the best, and that was agreed upon by our panel. And so I'd love to just pass the mic on to him just to introduce himself to you all, talk a little bit about his background. So welcome, Anthony. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks, Renee, for the introduction. So my name is actually Anthony Garriga. I am the new technology manager for the actual Lake Bluff Library. Still getting used to that, I know. So I come with an engineering background. I have a little over a decade in engineering, mainly in the renewable energy space. So anything with electric vehicles and also electric charging stations, which is pretty cool. Did that for quite a bit. I am fortunate to be here and have this opportunity. And essentially my goal is to bring some of that large enterprise knowledge that I have and hopefully use some of my experiences to help establish a new technology department here in the library. So as Renee mentioned, we have already hit the ground running within my first week, and that we've been involved in quite a bit of collaboration trying to understand the layout of the infrastructure here locally, and also collaborating with our third parties to try to get together and come up with an action plan, hopefully in the next few months. So more to come on that as we kind of progress forward. So, but yeah, thanks everyone for having me on that note. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me as well. And I'm sure my information's out there, so definitely reach out.
Great to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony.
All right, that takes us to our next item, which is an update on the new IGA with the Village of Lake Bluff. So I'll give you guys a high level summary of this. We met recently, I think it was August 9th. But like Janie, it's a little bit of a blur, but I think it was August 9th. We really focused on the water bills. You guys may remember that the original 1998 IGA said that the water for the property capital P 127 East Scranton would be covered by the village. After much investigation by our village administrator himself, walking the grounds, some of the public works employees from the village coming into the building to get their own eyes, ears on the looking at the water meter. There is no separate water meter for 127. The space occupied 2 floors by the museum and by the children's library as well. So we discussed, you may remember at one point, we went in, asked for all the backwater payments, which accumulated to approximately $22,000 in reimbursement. And at first blush, the village was like, okay, okay, we'll figure this out. The next meeting, there was some documentation provided to say, oh no, the predecessor to our current village administrator had notified a prior library director that it would be prorated, that it would be, that it would not be paid. Help me, Renee. It's a little bit of a blur. That Kent Street letter to Mary Pergander said something about water. Said it was not going to be covered.
Yes.
Then at this most recent meeting, August 9th, pretty sure it's that day, early August, yet more documentation was provided to say that there was a position of the village that they would pay 20% of the water bills for the property. So, people have been digging through records, Renee and Laurence on our side, Bettina and Drew on the village. And what they said is that they had documentation that the 20% was paid for a window of time. And then it appeared that those payments had, the 20% cover had dropped off. So they said, we will pay you $3,000 to be whole on historical water. And we, Renee, Allie, and I accepted that, provided they pay for 100% of the water moving forward, so that we don't have this upon the next IGA expiry, all of this time and energy spent trying to dig up what happened, why did it happen, etc. So, our next meeting with the village is the 29th of August. They have provided us with a draft IGA. Our attorneys have reviewed it. And tomorrow afternoon, Renee, Allie, and I are circling up to develop the next steps in our discussions, strategy, and position with the village. So it continues. We do have a stated goal agreed upon by both the village and the library negotiating teams that we will get this. Our goal is to get the IGA in front of both the village board and the library board in September.
Nice.
So Stay tuned. Ally and Renee, anything you'd like to add?
There was a note in the IGA to pull up the newest one, about the fact that it has not been a payment from last fiscal year as well. So there is something noted in there that they would pay for fiscal year 24, formerly known as lead contribution, which is currently at 0, received, as well as this fiscal year 25. I don't remember the exact phrasing they use, but it's underneath the $3,000 water payment as a one-time payment. Part of, I think, the issue we found is like some of this off-book, off-script negotiating, like we're talking emails from 2003 getting pulled up. How do we codify something that's going to allow people to have like a window in time and not reopen these negotiating, kind of what happened when with who sort of deals. Got to the point where Drew has called Kent Street, and we were talking about not wanting to get calls when we're in a retirement home one day. You know, so like, how do we make sure that this is done in the best interest of the public dollars that we are stewards of, and making sure that there's clarity for all parties.
So they did agree to 100% payment going forward? After, or that's still,
I would
that's
say
still
in
up in the air.
principle.
In principle,
In
yeah.
principle, gotcha.
Nothing has been agreed on
Gotcha.
yet.
Okay.
There's no signed IGA.
Correct, and, you know, based on the draft IGA we received on the 14th of August, the village has heard our argument. They haven't really provided a counter argument on a few things, but their kind of position is reflected in this IGA that just came through, so.
And one thing I think is worth mentioning is that currently their proposed term is 5 years with an option to renew for an additional year. If you remember, it was last time, so short history there, hopefully. But again, not agreed to, but that is what they have come back with.
Yeah.
The parking is dead, right?
That's
all.
not-
Parking is dead, yes. Yeah. They're not interested
Don't-
in our
Don't believe it.
parking package. Our
So that's
proposed
not a part of the IGA.
Cheaper than the garage.
package.
It will come back and haunt us, I can guarantee.
Well, I will say in this draft IGA, they did put in the water in full, so it's drafted in here, again, not agreed upon, because no one has signed it, but I think it's laid out as a utility.
Nicely done.
The only thing I would add, thank you, Bonnie and Ally, that was such a great overview, is I think our team, the three of us, are just trying to expect the unexpected in this process. There are conversations that happen in the meetings, and then sometimes what happens in the meeting doesn't always show up in the email or the new draft that we received, as Bonnie said, on the 14th. And so our lawyers have already reviewed it, provided their recommendations for changes. And so our intention is to continue to move forward as quickly as possible so that both boards can receive the IGA and review it in September, pending any other unexpected things happening, but that should continue to happen, I think.
Okay, any other IGA questions, comments? Okay. Then that brings us to our discussion on the Meristem Advisors Project proposal. I don't know if Renee or Jenny wants to lead this discussion.
Jenny, I can start. So as Jenny talked about the last HR meeting, there was just kind of a natural evolution of the discussion from the staffing review that I gave to thinking about how we can optimize our staffing further. And so after some kind of discussion, so I can understand what Jenny and Janie were hoping for as an HR committee, to do, my understanding was, let's try and leverage experts in the field to optimize my time as director, potentially to do a staffing analysis for the library. Now, I spent about 2 hours on the phone with Jamie Racklin, who is our financial consultant advisor in general, and I talked to him about the possibility of putting together a staffing analysis with him. And I just want to thank Jenny, who did a lot of research outside of Jamie, nationally even, to find people who might be able to do a staffing analysis for the library. And, I might pass it over to you now, Jenny. What you found is kind of what I was expecting. Staffing analysis are typically done by the director or they're done in-house. There are not a ton of people that might do this work as a consulting basis, because often what's needed is so homegrown. But we already have an established relationship with Jamie, and so I wanted to start there. And so the proposal that you have in the board packet, and it's just for discussion tonight, um, and it would guide me as director and the HR committee forward with next steps. But the proposal was collaborated on with myself and Jamie so that the whole board could understand what the work is, how much time it would take of my position, how much time it would take of the consultant, Jamie, and then also what we would get as a result. So, Jenny, I'll pass it off to you now to kind of talk through next steps or the next things.
Thank you, Renee. Well, I'll just give a little bit of a background to, in the HR committee, we have spent a number of hours talking about staffing with Renee, and I think it's something that's continually coming up, especially as we're looking at reduced hours in the library and thinking about how can we provide the best service to Lake Bluff. And I know that Renee has spent a lot of time too on staffing, and we're continually, I think, building and bringing in new staff. But I think Janie and I and Renee were interested in seeing maybe if we were able to take a step back, could we kind of get an overview of what would a consultant suggest for our staffing at this time? And moving forward, if we wanted to bring back more hours, if we wanted to bring back Sunday hours, what would that entail for staff and what would the financial implications be for the library? I did reach out to a number of consultants that I found on Rails, and most of them told me we don't do that work. And so I came up with, there were two people that actually thought they could provide us with something. The first one was Jamie Racklin. He hasn't done this type of a project exactly before, but he said he listened to what we were interested in learning about. And he said, I think I could do that. And what I liked about Jamie's proposal was that not only could he take a look at our staffing, but he could also wrap the project into kind of what our goals are, which is if we wanted to go back to the village and talk about what the financials are, if we needed more money for the library, or if we wanted to go out for levy, that he could use those numbers that we got from him, we could use to present to people. So that was a little different than the other person that I talked to who's recently gotten into consulting. Her name is Kathy Parker. But like Renee said, a lot of the consulting that she's done has been in-house as a director. So maybe she's been an interim director at a number of different libraries, and she's kind of taken a look at the staffing and seen what changes need to be made. So her analysis was going to be more of a narrative. So she was going to do a presentation for the board, but then there weren't like additional steps that she would take afterwards. I also loved that Jamie is familiar with our library and he knows kind of where we are at. So I think, and I'll let Janie chime in if there's anything else, but I thought staffing analysis really fits in with the priorities that we talked about in the last meeting, which was day-to-day operations and staffing. I think it's kind of what's been taking a lot of our time in some of our committee meetings and at our board meetings. And I think all of us have the same goal, that we want to see the director have enough support from staff, that we have enough staff in the building so that we can cover the hours that we are open. And But
And give Renee the support she needs to
Yes.
do her job most effectively rather than.
yes, definitely. Definitely. So I think something that really stood out to us when we were looking at the staffing analysis that we were really grateful that Renee did, but that took some of her time too, was that, you know, there's somewhat of an imbalance between full-time staff and part-time staff. And that's kind of the way the library has always operated historically. We've had a lot of part-time staff. And when we were looking at the number of hours that those staff are able to cover, it doesn't seem like having that many part-time staff is working to our advantage. And also part-time staff, you can have a lot more turnover. So I think we want to break some of those historical trends and see if we can move into a more positive direction. And I think getting an outside opinion could help us as a board to better understand what we need for the library. Because I understand as we're moving like piece by piece, but sometimes helps to have a whole picture to look at.
So Jenny, when I hear what you just described, I see an inconsistency between what Jamie's written up in his proposal, which refers back to the building project, the creation of the facilities master plan. What I hear you say is, hey, why don't we take a look at seeing, based on kind of current staffing. I think this is one of the questions. It's not the only question I heard you say. Based on current staffing, how many hours can we properly operate the library? Is that?
Well, I think that when Jamie and I talked, and when Renee and Jamie talked, I think the project is larger than just the staffing analysis, which is kind of what I like about it, because it fits into this larger plan of where we're going with Ingberg Anderson. If we were to look at an expansion, what would we need for staffing for that? So that I think there's a few models that we would be looking at, because when he talks about in here, a first sensitivity case, is if the library, from what I understood, and I don't know completely because I didn't talk to Jamie after this was, after he put this together, was, I understood that as what, like our baseline, what would our staffing look like if we went with the hours that we have right now? What would happen if we were to look at, if the hours were expanded? So it is a bigger project than we originally discussed, but I think that was kind of in keeping with something that the finance committee has talked about with Renee, as far as what you were gonna do down the road. So one of the questions I had for Renee and for Jamie was, can we do this in pieces? Can like the staffing analysis for where we're currently at be done right now? And then some of this then be addressed in January when Ingberg Anderson presents their project, and then we have that second piece there. But I don't know if I'm totally understanding it correctly. Renee, maybe you have a better sense?
Sorry, I had to find the mute button. No, Jenny, I think that you explained it very well. That's how I understood what you and Janie presented in the HR meeting, that you were hoping to get this project started now. Yep, so I wouldn't add anything.
Yeah, because I think that it is really important that we get some of the knowledge of where we're at with staffing, so that Jamie understands where we're at right now, just so he has that knowledge for moving forward.
So I hear you saying you really want to create the baseline case. Remember that we had Jamie at our board retreat in February, so we knew that the building project and the 3 scenarios for addressing building deficiencies like HVAC and ADA, and eventually, you know, we are going to need a roof eventually. Plus addressing some of the feedback from focus groups and survey, scenario 2, and staff, scenario 3, like everything wish list. stroller parking, one of the things we talked about at building and grounds. You know, Enberg Anderson is gonna come back to us with kind of those three scenarios. Those three scenarios feed Jamie's financial analysis for, okay, now that we know what the building costs are, what are the operational costs and implications of each of those three? What I hear is you wanted to add, like, what's the baseline for current staffing? So I just want to make sure, number one, we're not duplicating any work, and number two, we're not doing any work before we have the appropriate input from the strategic facilities plan that Enberg Anderson is helping us with.
Well, and I think the urgency that we kind of felt was this project, yeah, I mean, these, what we're getting from Enberg Anderson isn't coming for a few months.
Mhm.
And then there's still work that's gonna have to be done after that. So in the meantime, there's still a lot of lag time right now where we're still, you know, we're kind of adding staff like piecemeal. And I'm not sure that, I just think this might give us a little bit more clarity about kind of what direction we need to head it. So, and I think having Jamie collaborate at this time now would help, so that he has all the information that he needs for where we're at this point.
So the focus is on kind of short term, right?
Short term, but yeah, yes,
Immediate term.
but short term, I think short term. You know, for some of these things with the master plan to happen, we have to have more money. There's just, I feel like there's more steps. So even in January or February, we might not be able to, we could move forward with the staffing and we could move forward with analysis, but it's not gonna help us with where we're at right now. And
Can I interject with
Yeah.
kind of where I've been sitting for the last week or two when I've seen this proposal? So the finance committee in the next meeting, whenever it is, one of the things that we're going to have to talk about is the budget process. What is the board going to levy? Is it going to be the traditional 5% from the last couple of years? Does the library feel like they have strength behind a potential levy beyond 5%? Is there need to increase the levy short term now before a more significant financial ask to the community happens later when we go to a bigger building? And so I've been trying to marry these ideas together to what Jenny is saying. The HR committee wants to see, you know, potentially short-term solutions for staffing. And then also we need, as a finance committee, to plan for the budget process for the coming year. Does one inform the other? I don't know, but it's just something that I've been thinking about, and it could impact the finance committee's decision to maybe go for a 15% levy this year and have that hearing at the village that we've talked about with Jamie. And that would give a bump for operation now to be able to meet some staffing demands from the community, you know, currently all of that, and then continue to work through the process of the building analysis, with that being the long term. So I don't know, I haven't even told Jenny this, that I've been thinking about this, because it's just been very more recent, but in trying to marry these ideas together, that's maybe what I came up with.
thanks, Renee.
I think I'm also a little challenged on the way that this proposal has been put together, because I don't see a subtotal or a grand total figure.
He had one in his first draft, and then he decided to change it to make it more like a la carte menu, depending on, because honestly, he was trying to understand what the HR committee was asking for, and I was doing my best to represent that in the planning meeting. So depending on what the HR committee and maybe the board would want to do, you know, maybe the board would want a narrative report to show to the village, this is why we're going for 10, 15, whatever in the levy this year. You know, so that was his reasoning for providing it as a little bit more a la carte as he otherwise would have.
have two things. I think one, it's a little hard to contextualize for maybe those of us, and this might just be me, who haven't seen Renee's work that she did on the staffing, because I don't know how that would differ from what Jamie would put together for a current staffing analysis. So I'd be curious to see what Renee could pull together, or at least have the whole board have eyes on it. The second, and maybe sort of hand in hand, what Bonnie said, it's not just the cost, but staff hours for each of these. I don't know if I understand what the cost and the staff capacity or need would have to be in order to get a short-term staffing, sort of current staffing analysis, because this looks like it's all sort of goes together in a way. So I don't know what that add would be onto Renee's plate to have that completed, just because I don't see it necessarily outlined here, unless this like modeling with baseline financial projection is what you're describing, staffing. Or maybe we don't know.
Well, I thought Renee, when we talked, maybe you thought this might take about 25 hours of your time.
And that's what Jamie kind of estimated. I think there's a column, let me pull it up.
I see that as like the total hours for all of this, but I'm interpreting this is not just, is this just for current staffing analysis? I interpreted this as it would be for the.
This is for multiple scenarios.
Right, so if we're talking
Correct.
about how many staff hours would be required of Renee and the cost from Jamie just to complete that like baseline right now staffing analysis, I don't know. Or I guess I don't understand what that would be from this proposal. So I would be curious to also know what that is.
I agree. I'd like to see a rescaling of Jamie's proposal to just be on kind of baseline current staffing, like imagine we don't have the vacancies. You have to plan and estimate for vacancies, but there are a lot of pieces right now of roles that hopefully will be filled in the next 30 to 60 days. So that we can take the work that Renee has done thus far and bring it forward to how many, what is the capacity for staffing the building and what are we actually offering the community today?
So, and I know that I shared this in the HR committee and I just want to be transparent. When Jamie and I were talking and I explained that that is really the goal, we discussed that that is truly a project for the director to do. He could not really bring in anything, statistics through IPLA or what have you, from other libraries that would be able to help analyze our current, but it's the projections that Jamie helps libraries do, whether it's staffing, whether it's cost for operations. And he can bring in models and he can bring in data from other libraries to help with the projections, but the real-time analysis, and I've said this to the finance committee and the HR committee, I put the report that you all saw together in like an hour, and that was the time that I had. And so, we still have 3 positions vacant in the library. We still have the Engberg Anderson project coming up. I told the HR committee, I want to support what the priorities are of the committees and the board. But I felt that after the success of the finance committee presentation, that the library board had the data it needed at this time. But I wanted to, give my 110% effort to this conversation with Jamie so that I could better understand all of the possibilities that the library board could have in planning for short term, but also long term.
So, Renee, a question for you, right? So in September, we will have our September board meeting. And at that meeting, we'll discuss not only the new IGA between the library and the village, but also pilot hours. Can Jamie do any analysis to help you and the board make a data-centered decision on the conclusion of the current modified pilot?
You know, I'm gonna say no, because that's something that he doesn't, it would take more time for me to tell him all the things about the library, whereas I already know those things, and I would put together a report for you all. I think where the crux of this right now is that continue to struggle what the end goal is. I know that we have a variety of needs, and the HR committee is doing an amazing job, I have to say, on addressing them from a staffing perspective. The finance committee is addressing it from a budgetary perspective and has spent into our fund balance to support more staffing for the library to keep us open, and that's been amazing. You know, the building and grounds committee has really supported the library board for helping move important projects forward, and also what projects do we say no to right now? The carpeting project, we put that on pause. You know, all of those things. And so we're kind of at this moment where we don't know which way to go ahead. I'm gonna say next month that I think we need to extend the pilot further, based on our continued very high retention rate. We have not stabilized, but I'm gonna have more data to present to you all. But I also know that we've made some changes that are gonna shake out for the long term to be better for the library. We just haven't quite seen that impact the organization in the short term as we would have hoped, because we've had to experience some more turnover during this time, and also training. It takes a lot of time on the organization. So it's a long-winded answer, but it's a complex issue. And so I just want to be thorough in explaining why I feel that way.
So I'd like to continue to have this item on the finance committee agenda for the next finance committee meeting, so we can noodle a little more, Renee, on your suggestion of, is there some work we would like Jamie to do that may inform the next year's budget and the levy discussion with the village?
Yeah, that sounds great. I really think this might be the time to think about it. Because we know there are short-term needs and there are long-term needs. And I think the board has increased their capacity, and we have increased our knowledge in the community just with the pilot alone, that we are understaffed in a lot of ways, and we want to expand back. So yeah, I'm happy to provide whatever reports and data the finance committee would like to see at the next meeting.
Renee, would we be able to see that staffing table that you put together? I know HR and finance has seen it, but for the whole
Yes.
board, consider that with the pilot hours, like conclusion report, and now having seen Jamie's proposal, like having all of that in one place would be super helpful.
Yes, I will definitely, I'll email it out by the end of this week, actually, for all of you to start looking at it. It might benefit from some context, you know, so if you all want to call me or have any questions, those of you who haven't seen it, but then I would talk through it again at the September meeting.
Yeah, I think even just if we have it on the September meeting, so not like, at least for me speaking for myself, not a huge rush on it, but just to consider it at the next meeting in sort of a larger package.
Absolutely happy to do that.
And then Renee, the other thing, as I think about the board packet tonight, previous months, in the first 6 months of the pilot, we've taken a look at the salary payouts by category, vacation time, sick days, etc.
I'll
So-
present the full report, just like you have seen it for the first 6 months. You'll see that highlighted as a 3-month pilot, but next to the previous 6 months, so you can look at comparison.
Great.
Renee, thank you for working with Jamie to get this proposal.
Happy to.
So I think what we can do is, I think finance is probably gonna meet before the next HR committee meeting. And how about we then share with HR, here's what finance thinks Jamie can help with in the short term, and then continue the discussion there about some of the outputs HR wanted to see in advance of Enberg Anderson and then Jamie doing the work.
Yes.
I think what I hear from Renee, and as I think about Jamie Rackland's background, is he's never run a library. You know, like he doesn't know the nitty gritty of the operations. He can help you project the financial implications of changes to your hours, changes in the number of your staff, changes in the type of your staff, your IT needs, etc. But I get, you know, Renee said she'd be spending a lot of time teaching him about how to operate a library.
Yeah.
So do you want us to come to that meeting? Would it be easier to just, for us to be a joint meeting for the beginning, so that we can, you don't have to bring it all back to us at another committee meeting?
So I know we need to talk about the upcoming budget year cycle as well, which may not be of great interest to you. So
Sometimes we come for just the beginning and then the rest too.
is that right? What do you think?
We've done that before.
Want to join the next finance?
It might be,
It might be more efficient,
yes.
more efficient use of time.
So you guys can think about it and then just.
I'll throw out another option. We could have our first committee of the whole meeting.
We could do, yeah.
Which, you know, a lot of times when you need to go deep on an item and
Yeah.
discussion and presentation, that's the way the school board and the village will have a committee of the whole meeting. You know, again, we need a quorum to have that meeting, you know, doesn't mean we have to have everybody there. Would it be nice to have everyone there? Yes. And the village does theirs where they do it the hour before their every other week board meeting. The school board does it on alternative evenings. So that could be another thing, because HR finance doesn't bring in Sandy and Ally.
I will say that Barrington Library posted a message on the director thread just this week asking other libraries if they've transitioned from committee structure to committee of the whole. And of course, my eyes popped up right away. And I've seen already a couple of library governance policies that actually explain out what this is. And so I think if we're going to shift to committee of the whole at any point as a library, that would need a quick update to our governance structure. We couldn't just do it as like a one-off thing. It would actually be the way that the library board functions. And so that would require a policy update, but I have samples already from the libraries that operate with committee of the whole. So I just wanted to share that.
So Renee, we would do maybe then just a special meeting.
Yes, if it was like a quorum of the full board, it would be a special meeting of the full board, and it would just happen to include topics of finance and HR and anything of that nature.
I think I'd be inclined to do that so that we have broader perspectives coming together.
And I think like time is a so.
Say that again.
I think I think getting it in a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
So that it's not in different committees. I think it would
Okay.
be better.
And we had talked about that for some of the HR functions that the board as a whole does as well, so. All right, I'll take that as a follow-up to work with Renee to find a date for will be a special meeting because we don't have anything in our bylaws that allows a committee of the whole meeting. So we'll get that going.
Thank you.
Is the intent to do that instead of the upcoming finance meeting?
What do you recommend?
Well, no, I've got some real heavy constraints with work.
Yeah.
Putting in a new computer system, so the schedule's sort of up in the air, so I get a feel for what you were thinking if we're doing that meeting.
I think so. Kind of thinking through it now, right? Is the finance committee in the past has done the annual budgeting work kind of on its own, right? And then we come into the board usually, I think in December, January. And then the information gets submitted to Tina. So I think that has worked well, at least in my couple of years on the board. It seems to work well. I think that this special meeting would be more specifically around this proposal from Jamie. And discussion around if we think there's analysis Jamie could do to help support the budget ask.
Do you want Jamie at this meeting? He could zoom in. Save money for the travel.
Be nice. If you could just directly answer the questions. He's very informative. And then do you pay his hourly rate? It's $2.75?
Yeah, we pay his hourly rate. He's
Yeah,
not
that-
on retainer, so technically all the costs that you see are extrapolated based on his hourly rate.
So like if you were to attend the meeting, then to be paid the $2.75, like, because when I talked to him on the phone, he said that was just a consensus, so he wasn't charging us. But if he
Yeah,
came.
no, he would charge for attending a meeting. Yep.
Whether it's Zoom or travel, but
So it's like $2.75.
You'd be saving the travel expenses if you did Zoom.
It would be kind of. Then Renee doesn't have to go back and ask him the questions and then bring it back to us.
That sounds like a good use of time,
Maybe,
actually.
maybe we could have him like, maybe we could meet first and then kind of come up with our questions and then have him come at the end. For, plan for however long, like a half hour, so we could ask the questions directly with Renee there. Instead of having Renee have to go back and forth. And then if people.
I guess the last thing I would say is, as you all discuss, and as you know, I'm happy to support whatever direction the board wants me to take on this. Staffing analysis is very operational. And I feel like it continues to be in this gray area for us because the staffing of the library has to be approved financially by the board. The hours of the library have to be approved by the board. But when it comes to like figuring out what staffing is appropriate for the library, Janie mentioned this in the HR committee, like that wouldn't be a responsibility of the board. So I would really want what I would ask maybe is for everybody to consider that and also come to this meeting with what are you looking for as the deliverable? What do you want as a board to help you make decisions in future board meetings and future committee meetings that will help me be able to do the work that I need to get you there.
punctuated. All right, so I'll work with Renee to find a date for us to have a special meeting. It's clear that the HR committee is interested in having Jamie present. Maybe, I don't know if he bills on the half hour, but maybe if we do spend time creating and refining our questions for him in the first half hour, then he just has to dial in for a half hour.
Can we clarify though, his presence, is that about current staffing or is this more clarification about the proposal? Because that proposal is bigger vision. So what is his scope there? I mean, that's what Renee was getting into.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is we would pull back. It's not about scenarios, it's about sort of the here and now for potentially supporting a finance and ask for fiscal year 25, 26. as well as current staff. I know, Jenny, I think you said this at one point, you know, just getting an outsider's perspective on an outside perspective on like the amount of hours we have and the staff we have, the amount of hours we have. Does that seem to make sense in terms of how we function as a library and what we offer the community in terms of total number of hours?
Well, in the long
Sorry.
term, yeah, and I think also the long-term financial implications of adding staff and what the costs are for us.
I think that certainly comes with, you mean the additions made in fiscal year 20?
Like if we were to move part-time to, if we were to move part-time staff to full-time, it seemed like that was something that he could help us to understand.
Mhm.
Like what those implications would be, and then how we could present them to the village so that we can get village support, or go out to levy if we need to get the money that we need to operate the library at the best level that we as trustees and the director thinks it can operate at.
So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes down to what are the measurables, what we're looking to get, because I mean, his proposal here is like maybe 20, and it could be anywhere from $20,000 to $22,000 if you took all of this. Like, I agree with what most people are saying, just needs to be clarified if we're going to take it in steps, and then what those steps are going to give us, because, you know, we also got to be careful. We were trying to work within the budget that we set last year, and then we've got to kind of set a budget for next year and make sure that, you know, if we're going to ask for a levy of 10% or 15%, that we ask for the right amount and not say, oh, you know, it's.
And then we have
15,
to go back.
We have to know that this is what we're going to be looking for.
Right.
This is what we want to get out of it. And
So I feel like at our special meeting, we need to refine the scope and time frame of the project, as well as the key questions we want him to help us answer. So we spent a fair amount of time on this tonight. Does that feel like a path toward
yeah, and I don't.
advancing?
Yeah, I don't want him to sort of explain all the different steps in there and for us to pay him while he's telling
Right,
us
right,
what's
right.
going on. That we should have that in front of us before we engage him.
You want to request that he write up a new project before we meet?
Or clarify, like Ali was saying, you know, what are the steps, what are we looking for? Are we looking for what the needs and wants are right now? And I guess I'm a little confused because again, to your point, Renee, you said earlier that this is usually a director's responsibility, because you know the needs of the library better than most, and you know the people, and you know their capabilities. You're going to go into something where it's like, okay, in theory, you know, this person can do this, this, and this, but we're a small library. These people wear multiple hats, and you know, so there's so it's sort of nebulous, it's sort of all over the place at the moment, or not over the place, but just needs sort of focus on. Yeah.
And I think while there is maybe some gray area, I would really like for the board to avoid veering into operational. And I fear that there can be, if it's not super clear and crisp, that it could end up that way, and that's not a good use of, you know, our talents. And also what Renee obviously has a strong grasp on. So I think there is some gray area there that before proceeding with paying Jamie for this, making sure that's really clear to all of us and to him too. So when he comes in, you know what we're getting out of it, and knowing that there is obviously a little bit of, it's a fine line, because we know that staff is operational, but it does inform budget and how we get into the levies. So there is going to be obviously some cross collaboration there, but I do want to make sure that we're adhering to our role with fidelity and not veering into the operational side of things too much.
My recommendation would be that we have our special meeting without Jamie, because I think we're looking at to coming at a project with him, an incremental project with him in two different directions. So that would be my recommendation. All right. Item B, the Enberg Anderson signage project, part of our, thanks, Scott. Part of our disability grant from the state.
Yeah, so we actually received the glorious $45,000 check in the last couple weeks, and it will be on next month's financial report. So I'm happy to say that. And so one of the projects that the $45,000 grant will help support is this signage project. And so as you may remember, when the Universal Design Project or the report came out about our building, a lot of our signage is incompliant. And so we asked Engberg Anderson as part of our application for this grant to propose updating it in compliance, but also helping support more improved wayfinding. And so I'm just sharing this information to let you know that this project is moving forward. I've signed it already. You don't have the signed copy, but it's signed. So we're officially in agreement with Engberg Anderson. And I really am glad that this is going to be able to move forward. You know, these are improvements that we can make now, that we can always, utilize in any iteration of the next phase of the building, whether it's bathroom signage, whether it's outdoor signage. And so, yeah, I just wanted to let you know the scope and remind you about this project as it will continue to move forward. I don't have a timeline, but Ingberg Anderson now will work with me on this, and then we'll also continue to do the strategic facilities plan with the library and the board, move that forward. So two projects concurrently with the same firm, all to the end result of improving our building and experience for the patrons.
Renee, what's the expected timeline for project completion on the signage?
Oh, I thought I said that. Yeah, I don't have a timeline or a time frame identified yet. So we just signed the agreement about a week or two ago, and I have to have a project meeting to discuss. But Jill will be at that meeting too, as it relates to communication, and any extra support that I can have from staff will be appreciated. So, but a lot of this is building related, and so I'll let staff know. I'll let staff and board know.
Okay, sounds good. Just let us know next month. All right, any other questions on the signage project?
What exactly is a roof identification sign?
That is a great question for our architects. I don't know, Janie, but I'm sure there is code related to that. Otherwise it wouldn't be there, but I will certainly find out, as I've learned a lot over the last year or two about building and grounds. So I'll learn about that too.
I mean, everything else is pretty self-explanatory, but that one is a little out there.
25 signs for the roof.
Yeah,
I just did a quick search.
and
Serving to identify buildings with light frame truss type style construction, repetitive wood, light steel framing as primary. I don't know for what purpose. But I'm assuming there is some. Looks like some sort of like fire emergency response
okay,
into it.
I will Google it too and see what.
Yeah.
I can report at the next building and grounds committee. I'll shoot an email to Sean and ask for you.
Yes, it identifies the truck construction of this sign, so like.
So what weight or anything like that could be on the inside?
I think it's also for the event of fire.
Okay.
Somebody needs to go up on the roof.
Yes, yes,
Ah,
due to the type of construction,
gotcha.
weren't there.
That's sort of makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
I would guess it to Renee's point of code situation.
Thank you.
But I think it is valid to say, is 25 the appropriate number for our building? Okay. Library correspondence.
I am very pleased to present the following two flyers. And this is for an upcoming partnership program series with the Lake Bluff History Museum. One of my goals since I first started here was to improve collaboration with the museum, and I am very proud of what has come together. Janie, would you like to discuss a little bit about this?
I would very much. This is something that has been on the table with the History Museum for quite a few years now. When we were first getting to the concept of the exhibit that's in there right now about the relationship between Lake Bluff and Lake Michigan, and it was still just a thought experiment at that point, we discussed talking about the geology of the lakes and really going back in history and starting at the beginning, which of course takes us naturally to who was here before the Europeans came. And we gave a little bit of ink to that in the exhibit that's still up there, which if you haven't seen, I would very much urge you to go look at it because it's really great. There's some great, and the museum actually won an award for that exhibit now. I'm working on this along with Renee. I've got a bunch of people in the Native American community who have been working, who are helping me out because I'm just learning from scratch as I go along. And so I hope to have an exhibit, a new exhibit about the Native Americans who were in this area before we were, and have that up and going. I'm really hoping for middle of September, but I have a feeling it might not happen until this first one is, which is in October. So probably more realistic is to have it beginning of October when this gentleman is going to come and do that no one ever sees Indians, Native Americans. He lives in Skokie, by the way. And so I've spoken with him several times. Sounds like a really interesting guy. And then this other woman who's coming, I've actually seen her presentation already before. And I just thought that people in Lake Bluff might enjoy hearing what they have to say. And I've got a couple more ideas for further speakers to come in. These particular ones are through the Illinois Humanities Rhodes Scholars Program, and they have a couple of others that I in the process of putting together. We've got a couple of other things on taps. I've been working with the Mitchell Museum down in Evanston. I'm very excited about it. It's gonna be cool.
Thanks, Janie. You're all invited to attend, of course. These are Saturday afternoon programs. They will be registered required because we do have a room limit, but the registration is available already. And I think this is a good example of collaboration and sharing our space, expanding the museum's resources, but also welcoming people that might not already come to the library, talking about a topic that's very important. In fact, I saw Singing Bird is actually a program that the Vernon Area Public Library is hosting this fall also. So these are prominent presenters, and I hope you all will consider attending.
Yeah, yeah. And I love hearing you say, Renee, that you were hoping to get a better collaboration going on with the History Museum, because that was my main purpose for being on both boards, is to get a better collaboration between the two. And it's been a long process to get that cooperation going, and I'm thrilled about it.
It's important. The next correspondence is an article from Computer and Libraries. You will see, the Finance Committee will see changes in our budgeting for digital collections, ebooks and audiobooks. You've heard me say I've wanted to rebalance our print and digital budgeting to better support our operating budget for digital collections. This article talks about the landscape of ebooks and digital collections with respect to the publishers and why digital content is so expensive for public libraries. I highly encourage you to read through it. This question comes up at our library all the time. Why are our holds so long? Our hold list so long? And can't you? It's cheap for me to buy an ebook on my Kindle. Why is it not cheap for the library? And so this question might come up from the community. So I highly recommend this article. And then the last item in the correspondence is the article that just went live Friday. Had to make some late last minute evening changes to the data that was presented. But we made those changes at 9:44 Friday night. Really great article about Lake Bluff Library and Lake Forest Library on the per capita grant. And it now features information about the accessibility grant. And as Jill noted to me, they used Lake Bluff Library as a featured photo this time when they often might use Lake Forest. So that was a really nice thing to see our library highlighted in this case. So that's all I have for correspondence.
Thanks, Renee. One thing I'll mention, just skimming through this article again, is the Highland Park figure here is also well beyond their per capita. At that Julie Morrison, Bob Morgan meeting, is it Heidi Smith? The director for the Highland Park Library did mention that they have received some funding to create an expansion. And their expansion is also addressing some ADA shortcomings that exist at the Highland Park Library.
They were one of the libraries that I stayed to watch their presentation for the public library construction grant. So that, I was able to get a sense of what those presentations are like for our library if ever we apply for one. So yeah, congratulations to them.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Renee. Thanks for the update on correspondence. Executive session, is that needed tonight?
I believe so.
Okay. Any other business?
Janie, did you have a foundation update you were going to make?
Oh, yeah, thank you for reminding me. I can tell you that short of the foundation currently exists of Kathy, myself, and John Heinzelman. And Kathy is interested in closing it out. I think I mentioned this at another meeting. What the plan is, and Kathy actually approached me about this, which I was very happy to see this, that she had read that one of the grants that we got required matching funds. And she felt that that was a really good way to use what monies are left in the foundation coffers. So I think there's around $36,000 plus interest once the CD comes due, which I believe will be in October. At that point, by the way, the foundation already paid for the new carols upstairs. And have you gotten that check yet, Renee?
She's coming tomorrow or Thursday.
Perfect. Okay, so once that CD is due, we will figure out how much we have to leave in there, because there is a tremendous amount of time, effort, and some not inconsiderable expense to set up a foundation. So what we're going to do going forward is, I'm not sure what John is going to do. I suspect he's going to want to be off too, but Kathy just wants to do this one last thing and be done. I will take over as I guess, director of the foundation at that point. And it will sort of be a sleepy foundation until such time as it needs to start operating again. By that time, I'm thinking I will no longer be a trustee, and I will have to, we will look for some other volunteers in the community to maybe help out with the foundation. But we're not going to completely dismantle it. It's going to stay in place. And also we have one thing that I can talk to her, or you can, Renee, when Kathy comes in, approach her about possibly getting, more donations from, the Wintrust Bank Corporation, the local bank, because they've been giving us, a fair amount of money. They've been making yearly donations for a period of about 5 years, and, see if they'd be interested in continuing with that. So yeah, the foundation is going to, give us a big chunk of money.
And that'll go towards matching the 45,000.
Correct.
Okay. Great.
It'll be 36 plus interest. Right.
It's committed $5,000 the last meeting and the village committed $5,000.
So we.
So we've got it. We've got it matched. We're there.
Great.
Yeah,
Terrific. Thanks, Janie.
you're welcome.
Any other business? Would anyone like to move to adjourn?
I so move.
Okay, at 8:55, trustee Jerch, is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Friedeman, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All right. Have a fabulous evening. Rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.